The security guard hit the marble floor hard. His badge skidded across the polished stone, spinning to a stop at the feet of the man who'd just shoved him. I said, "Use the back entrance." Derek Morrison's voice echoed through the lobby of Titan Properties. "Janitor, security, maintenance, you people don't walk through the front door. Ever." Marcus Johnson, 57 years old, single father, night shift security guard for 3 years, slowly pushed himself up from the cold floor. His lip was bleeding. His uniform was torn. What Derek Morrison didn't know, what nobody in that building knew, was that Marcus Johnson had closed on a $47 million lottery win exactly 11 days ago. And 6 days after that, he'd quietly purchased controlling shares in Titan Properties. The man Derek had just thrown to the ground owned the entire company. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. And trust me, what happens next will make your blood boil. Marcus Johnson tasted blood. Copper and salt mixed on his tongue as he pressed his palm against the marble floor, pushing himself up inch by inch. His left knee screamed an old injury from his army days that never quite healed right. 57 years old, 22 years of military service, 3 years working the graveyard shift at this building. And here he was bleeding on a floor he'd mopped 1,000 times. Derek Morrison stood over him, adjusting his silk tie like he'd just finished swatting a fly. Behind him, the morning rush of employees streamed through the lobby, their eyes sliding past Marcus like he was furniture, like he was nothing. "You hear me?" Derek's voice carried that particular tone, the one Marcus had heard his whole life. The one that said, "You don't matter." Back entrance. Always. I don't care if the building's on fire. Marcus got to his feet slowly. His body ached, but his face remained calm. 57 years had taught him how to wear that mask. "I was just trying to drop off my leave request," Marcus said, his voice steady. "My daughter's sick. I need Thursday off." "Leave request?" Derek laughed, actually laughed. "You don't hand-deliver leave requests to the front desk. You email your supervisor like everyone else in your position." Your position. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. "My supervisor's been ducking my emails for 2 weeks. Not my problem." Derek was already turning away, already dismissing him. "Now get out of my lobby before I call someone to escort you out." Marcus looked down at his badge on the floor. 3 years of loyal service. Perfect attendance. Not a single complaint. He bent down and picked it up, his fingers closing around the plastic. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. Derek was already gone, striding toward the executive elevator like a king returning to his castle. The lobby had emptied around them, the morning crowd had passed, leaving Marcus alone with the receptionist. A young woman named Brittany, who was studying her computer screen like her life depended on it. She hadn't looked up once. Not when Derek shoved him. Not when he hit the floor. Not when he bled on the marble she'd watched him clean countless times. Marcus walked toward the side exit, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. But at the door he paused, turned slightly, looked back at the lobby, the crystal chandeliers, the leather furniture, the massive portrait of the company founders hanging above the reception desk. 11 days ago, his life had changed forever. A lottery ticket. A gas station in Decatur. Numbers he'd been playing for 15 years. His daughter Maya's birthday, his late wife's birthday, his army service number. $47 million. The first thing he'd done was cry. Sat in his truck in the parking lot of that gas station and wept like a baby. Not from happiness, not exactly. From relief. From the weight of 20 years of struggle suddenly lifting off his shoulders. The second thing he'd done was call his financial advisor, a woman named Patricia Chen, who'd been recommended by a buddy from his army days. Patricia had connections. Patricia had discretion. And Patricia had presented him with an opportunity that made his heart stop. Titan Properties is struggling, she'd told him over the phone. Their stock is depressed. The board is fractured. With the right moves, you could acquire a controlling interest for roughly $31 million. Marcus had been silent for a long moment. "That's the company I work for," he'd finally said. "I know." Patricia's voice was careful. "That's why I brought it to you. You mentioned once how they treat the staff there, the maintenance workers, the security guards. You said—" "I know what I said." Another long pause. "Marcus, you'd own them. Every executive who ever looked through you like you were invisible, you'd be their boss." The thought had terrified him, and thrilled him, and kept him awake for 3 straight nights. 6 days ago, he'd signed the papers. Quietly, anonymously. Through a holding company Patricia had set up called Horizon Investments. 5 days ago, he'd gone back to work. Same uniform, same graveyard shift, same invisible man. He wanted to see. He needed to see. Before he walked into that boardroom and changed everything he needed to know the truth about the people who ran this company. Not the polished version they'd show a new owner, the real version. The one they showed the janitors and security guards. The one they'd just shown him on that marble floor. Marcus pushed through the side exit and stepped into the morning sun. His lip had stopped bleeding, but his knee throbbed with every step as he made his way to the employee parking lot. His truck was parked in the far corner, the section reserved for support staff, a good quarter mile from the building. He'd walked that distance thousands of times. Rain, snow, 100-degree heat, always the same spot, always the furthest from the door. He was halfway to his truck when his phone rang. "Dad!" Maya's voice was thick with congestion. "Did you get the day off?" Marcus closed his eyes. His daughter was 23, a graduate student at Spelman, and the only person in the world who truly knew him. She'd been sick for a week, some kind of flu that wouldn't quit, and she needed him. "Working on it, baby girl." "That doesn't sound good." "It's fine, just some paperwork issues." "Dad?" Maya's voice sharpened despite her illness. "What happened?" Marcus reached his truck and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. "Nothing I can't handle." "You're doing that thing where your voice goes flat and you pretend everything's fine when it's not." He laughed, despite himself. His daughter had always been able to read him like a book. "I had a run-in with one of the executives, Derek Morrison. The one you told me about. The one who makes janitors use different bathrooms." "That's him." "What did he do?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to worry her, but he also couldn't lie to Maya. He'd never been able to. "Shoved me," he said finally. "I was in the main lobby trying to drop off my leave request. He didn't like that, made it physical." Silence on the other end. Then, "Dad, you own that company." "I know." "You could fire him right now, one phone call." "I know." "So why don't you—" Marcus looked back at the building, all glass and steel gleaming in the morning light. From here he could see the executive floors at the top. Derek Morrison was probably up there right now sipping coffee, feeling powerful. Because it's not just him, Maya. It's the whole system. The way they treat people. The way they look at someone in a security uniform and see nothing. If I fire Derek today, they'll just replace him with someone else tomorrow. Nothing changes. "So what's your plan?" Marcus had been thinking about this for days, lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, working through the angles. "I keep watching, I keep documenting, and when I finally walk into that boardroom, I don't just come with anger, I come with proof. Evidence they can't deny. A case so solid that when I clean house, nobody can say it was personal." "Dad, you're bleeding on floors while you build a case." My lips already stopped. "That's not the point, and you know it." He did know it. But he also knew something else. Something his years in the army had taught him. The battles you won quickly were rarely the battles that mattered. The ones that mattered required patience, strategy, the willingness to take hits while you positioned yourself for the knockout blow. 2 more weeks, he said. "That's all I need. 2 more weeks of watching, and then I make my move." Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Just be careful, okay? These people, they don't play fair. Neither do I. Not anymore. Done. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Titan Properties at 5:47 a.m., same as always. The graveyard shift ended at 6 hours, but he always came early to overlap with Ray Patterson, the evening guard, who was 72 years old and had been working security since before Marcus was born. Ray was sitting at the side entrance desk, his eyes heavy with fatigue. He looked up when Marcus walked in, and his weathered face broke into a smile. "Marcus, brother, you look rough. What happened to your lip?" Marcus waved it off. "Nothing, just clumsy." Ray's eyes narrowed. He'd worked security for 40 years. He knew what clumsy looked like, and this wasn't it. "Derek Morrison." Marcus stopped. "How'd you know?" "Because he did the same thing to Jerome last month, pushed him into a wall for walking too slow in the hallway." Ray shook his head. "Man thinks he owns the place." "He doesn't." Marcus thought. "I do." "Why didn't Jerome report it?" Ray laughed bitterly. "Report it to who? HR? You know who runs HR, Derek's wife. The whole system's rigged, Marcus. Always has been." Marcus filed that information away. Derek's wife in HR. Another piece of the puzzle. "How's your granddaughter?" Marcus asked, changing the subject. Ray's granddaughter Destiny was 12. And Ray's whole world, he worked the security job just to help pay for her private school tuition. "She's good. Honor roll again." Ray's face lit up. "That girl's gonna be somebody, Marcus. I can feel it. With a grandfather like you, I believe it." Ray stood slowly, his joints creaking. He was too old for this job. Everyone knew it, but he couldn't afford to retire. Social Security barely covered his rent, and his pension had been gutted years ago when the company restructured. "You be careful today," Ray said, gathering his things. "I heard Morrison's on the warpath, something about the quarterly numbers being down. When that man's stressed, everybody suffers." "I'll keep my head down." "Do that." Ray paused at the door. "And Marcus, whatever happened with your lip, don't let it slide. I know you think you gotta take it, but there's gotta be a line somewhere." There is, Marcus thought. And Derek Morrison crossed it yesterday. The morning passed slowly. Marcus did his rounds, checking doors, monitoring cameras, signing in vendors. The building came alive around him, suits streaming through the lobby, the smell of expensive coffee filling the air. At 9:15, he saw her. Keisha Williams walked through the side entrance, carrying a box of files, so heavy she could barely see over the top. She was the company's assistant controller, a title that sounded impressive, but came with a salary Marcus knew was 30% below market rate. He knew because he'd pulled her personnel file 2 days ago. He'd pulled everyone's files. Keisha was 41, single mother of 2, and one of the only black employees above the clerical level. She'd been with Titan Properties for 7 years and had been passed over for promotion 4 times. "Morning, Ms. Williams," Marcus said, stepping forward. "Let me help you with that." Keisha's face registered surprise. Most people in this building didn't acknowledge the security guards at all, let alone offer help. "Oh, thank you. That's very kind." She let Marcus take the box and fell into step beside him. "I don't think I know your name." "Marcus. Marcus Johnson. I work the night shift mostly, but I'm pulling some extra hours this week." "Nice to meet you, Marcus." She smiled, genuine, warm, not the fake corporate smile everyone else wore. "I'm Keisha." "I know. I've seen you working late. You're here more than most of the executives." Keisha laughed. "Yeah, well, someone has to actually do the work around here." They reached the elevator. Marcus pressed the button and handed back the box. "Heavy load for a Wednesday morning." "Quarterly audit," Keisha said, her smile fading. "Mr. Morrison wants all the financial records reorganized by end of day. He says there are discrepancies." The way she said discrepancies made Marcus's ears perk up. Discrepancies. Keisha glanced around, lowering her voice. I shouldn't talk about this. But let's just say I've been finding things in the books that don't add up, and every time I flag something, it gets buried. Last month, I found a $200,000 expense charge with no documentation. I sent it to my supervisor. Never heard back. The elevator arrived. Keisha stepped in, but Marcus held the door. Ms. Williams, if you ever need someone to talk to someone outside the usual channels, I'm a good listener. She looked at him strangely. That's an odd thing for a security guard to say. Maybe, but sometimes the people everyone ignores are the ones who see the most. The elevator doors closed on Keisha's puzzled expression. Marcus returned to his post, his mind racing. $200,000 in undocumented expenses. Financial irregularities being buried. Derek Morrison demanding records be reorganized, which could easily mean altered. This wasn't just about rudeness and discrimination anymore. This might be fraud. Chum. At 11:30, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Chen board meeting scheduled for March 15th. That's 3 weeks away. Your ownership will become public record then. Recommend revealing yourself before that date on your own terms. 3 weeks. He had 3 weeks to gather everything he needed. He texted back. Understood. I need access to financial records. Can you arrange it? Patricia's response came quickly. As majority shareholder, you have legal right to any company document. But if you request them now, they'll know someone's looking. You sure you want to tip your hand? Marcus thought about it. Not yet. I'll find another way. He pocketed his phone and resumed his rounds, but his mind was elsewhere. He needed to see those financial records. He needed proof of whatever Derek Morrison was hiding. And he thought he knew exactly how to get it. Tug. That evening, Marcus did something he'd never done before. He stayed past his shift. The night security team consisted of just 2 guards after 10 p.m. budget cuts they'd been told, and Marcus had traded shifts with one of them, claiming he needed the extra hours. The other guard, a kid named Deshaun, who was working his way through community college, was happy for the company. Yo, Mr. Johnson, you ever wonder what these executives actually do up there? Deshaun asked around midnight. They were doing rounds on the 4th floor, the low-level administrative area. Like, I see them walking around all day looking important, but what's the actual work? Marcus smiled. Meetings, emails, looking at spreadsheets, making decisions that affect thousands of people and then going home to their nice houses. That's it. That's most of it, yeah. Man. Deshaun shook his head. I'm busting my ass just trying to get an associate degree, and these dudes make 6 figures for sitting in meetings. Life isn't fair, Deshaun, but that doesn't mean it can't change. They reached the end of the hallway. Deshaun's radio crackled. Someone at the loading dock needed a signature. I got it, Deshaun said. You good up here? I'm good. Take your time. Marcus waited until Deshaun's footsteps faded, then moved quickly. He'd been studying the building's layout for 3 years. He knew which doors had keycard logs and which didn't. He knew which cameras were real and which were dummies installed to save money. The financial records room was on this floor. And Marcus happened to know that the lock had been broken for 6 months. He'd reported it twice, and both times his report had been lost. He slipped inside, closing the door softly behind him. The room was filled with filing cabinets floor to ceiling. Marcus pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and started searching. It took him 20 minutes to find what he was looking for. A cabinet marked Q3 Q4 Reconciliation, containing folders stuffed with invoices, expense reports, and internal memos. Marcus began photographing everything, page after page after page. His hands were steady. Years of military training had taught him to stay calm under pressure, but his heart was pounding. This was it. This was the evidence. Invoices for services never rendered. Expense reports with forged signatures. Payments to companies that, when Marcus Googled them on his phone, didn't seem to exist. And at the bottom of one folder, a memo from Derek Morrison to the chief financial officer dated 8 months ago. Per our discussion, the special project funds should be routed through the Cayman subsidiary. Keep this off the main books. I don't want any questions from the auditors or the board." Marcus stared at the memo, read it twice, 3 times. Derek Morrison wasn't just an arrogant bully, he was a thief. He was embezzling from the company Marcus now owned. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. He photographed the memo and every document around it. Then he carefully replaced everything exactly as he'd found. It slipped out of the room and resumed his rounds like nothing had happened. When Deshawn returned from the loading dock, Marcus was standing at the 4th-floor window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. "Everything cool, Mr. Johnson?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Everything's just fine, Deshawn. Just fine." The next morning, Marcus sat in his truck in the parking lot, unable to move. His phone was filled with photographs of evidence enough to send Derek Morrison to prison, probably. Enough to justify cleaning house when he revealed himself as the owner. But something was bothering him. If he came forward now, if he called the board, revealed his ownership, presented the evidence, what would happen? Derek would be fired, sure. Maybe arrested. But the system that had allowed this to happen, the culture that treated people like Marcus and Ray and Keisha as invisible, that would survive. It always survived. New executives would come in. They'd learn to play the same games. They'd look at the security guards and janitors and see the same nothing. Marcus needed more than evidence of fraud. He needed to expose the whole rotten structure. The discrimination, the cover-ups, the way power protected itself at the expense of everyone else. And for that, he needed an ally on the inside. He thought about Keisha Williams, carrying that heavy box of files talking about discrepancies that got buried. She'd seen things. She knew things. And she'd been passed over so many times that she had nothing left to lose. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed Patricia Chen. "I need a favor," he said when she answered. "There's an employee here named Keisha Williams. I want you to dig into her personnel file, performance reviews, salary history, promotion applications, everything." "May I ask why?" "Because I think she might be the key to all of this. And before I approach her, I need to know her story." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "You're building an army, aren't you?" "I'm building a case. There's a difference." "Is there?" Marcus watched employees streaming into the building through the main entrance. Derek Morrison's Mercedes pulled into its reserved spot by the front door, the spot closest to the entrance naturally. "Just get me the file, Patricia. I'll take it from there." He hung up and watched Derek stride into the building like he owned it. "Enjoy it while you can," Marcus thought. "Your days are numbered. You just don't know it yet." Patricia Chen's email arrived at 6:47 a.m., 3 days after Marcus had made his request. He was sitting in his truck in the employee parking lot, still wearing his security uniform, when his phone buzzed. The attachment was 43 pages long. Marcus read it twice before he could breathe normally again. Keisha Williams had been hired 7 years ago as a junior accountant. Her starting salary was $42,000, $12,000 below market rate for someone with her qualifications. Over 7 years, she'd received exactly one raise, a 3% cost of living adjustment that barely kept pace with inflation. In that same period, she'd applied for promotion 4 times. Each application had been denied with the same vague language, "not ready for increased responsibility," or "needs more seasoning in current role." Meanwhile, 3 white men she'd personally trained had been promoted above her. One of them, a guy named Brad Hutchins, was now her direct supervisor. His personnel file showed he'd been with the company for 3 years and had already received 2 promotions and a 15% salary increase. But the part that made Marcus's blood boil was the performance reviews. Keisha's reviews were stellar. Every single one. Exceptional attention to detail. Consistently exceeds expectations. A vital asset to the financial team. The reviews praised her work ethic, her accuracy, her leadership potential. And yet, she'd been passed over, again and again and again. Marcus scrolled to the final page of the document. Patricia had included a handwritten note. "I also pulled her personal background. Single mother, 2 kids ages 8 and 12. Sole provider. Behind on her car payments. Her mother lives with her and requires medical care. She can't afford to lose this job, Marcus. Whatever you're planning, keep that in mind. Marcus stared at those words for a long time. Keisha Williams couldn't afford to lose her job, which meant she couldn't afford to tell the truth, which meant the system had her exactly where it wanted her. Talented enough to be useful, desperate enough to be controlled. He understood that trap. He'd lived in it for most of his life. His phone rang. Maya. Hey, baby girl, how you feeling? Better. The fever broke last night. She paused. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said, about building a case. And I think you need to be careful about who you trust. These corporate types, they'll smile in your face and stab you in the back. I've seen it happen to my professors, my classmates, everyone who tries to fight the system from inside. I know the risks, Maya. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're a 57-year-old black man in a security uniform trying to take down a network of wealthy white executives who've been protecting each other for decades. That's not a fair fight. It's not supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be right. Maya was quiet. Then, you sound like Mom. Marcus felt the familiar ache in his chest. Denise had been gone for 8 years now. Cancer had taken her fast and cruel, but not a day passed when he didn't hear her voice in his head. Your mother would have done the same thing, he said softly. You know she would have. Yeah, Maya's voice cracked slightly. She would have walked into that boardroom and burned it all down. Well, I'm not quite that dramatic, but I learned from the best. They talked for a few more minutes about Maya's classes, her recovery, her plans for spring break. Normal father-daughter stuff. The kind of conversation Marcus had fought his whole life to be able to have. When he hung up, he sat in his truck for another 10 minutes just breathing. Then he went to find Keisha Williams. He found her in the break room on the 4th floor alone, staring at a cup of coffee like it held the secrets of the universe. It was 7:15 a.m. early for most employees, but Marcus had noticed that Keisha was always early. Always the first one and last one out. Ms. Williams? She looked up surprised. Oh, Marcus, right? The security guard who helped me with the boxes. That's me. He gestured to the chair across from her. Mind if I sit? She hesitated, then nodded. Sure. But I should warn you I'm not great company this morning. Rough night. Rough week. Rough year, actually. She laughed bitterly. Rough career, if I'm being honest. Marcus sat down, studying her face. She looked exhausted. Not just physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting battles you know you can't win. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus said. Depends on how personal. The discrepancies you mentioned the other day. The ones that keep getting buried. What happened with those? Keisha's expression changed. Guarded now. Careful. Why do you want to know? Because I've been here 3 years. I've seen things, heard things, and I'm starting to think this company has some serious problems that go way beyond rude executives. That's a dangerous thing to say out loud, Marcus. I know. Keisha studied him for a long moment. Marcus could see her calculating, weighing the risk of trusting him against the weight of carrying her secrets alone. You're not really just a security guard, are you? She said finally. What makes you say that? The way you talk, the way you observe, the questions you ask. She shook her head. I've been in corporate America long enough to spot the players. And you're not playing security guard. You're playing something else. Marcus felt a flicker of respect. Keisha Williams was sharper than anyone had given her credit for. You're right, he said. I'm not just a security guard, but I'm not ready to tell you what I really am. Not yet. What I can tell you is that I'm on your side, and I think you've been waiting a long time for someone to be on your side. Keisha's eyes glistened. She looked away quickly, blinking. 3 weeks ago, she said, her voice low. I found a trail. Payments going to a company called Meridian Consulting. $50,000 a month for the past 2 years. I looked up Meridian Consulting. It doesn't exist. No website, no address, no employees. Just a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands. Marcus kept his face neutral, but inside his heart was racing. This confirmed what he'd found in the records room. What did you do with that information? I wrote a report, documented everything, sent it to my supervisor, Brad Hutchins. Keisha's jaw tightened. The guy I trained, the guy who got promoted over me twice. You know what he did? What? He called me into his office, closed the door, and told me I was overstepping. Said I should focus on my assigned duties and stop creating problems. Then, he took my report and put it through the shredder while I watched. He destroyed evidence of potential fraud. That's what I said. You know what he told me? Keisha's voice went cold. He said, Keisha, you're a single mom. You've got 2 kids, a sick mother, and a mortgage you can barely afford. You really want to make waves right now? Marcus felt anger surge through him, hot and righteous. He threatened you. He didn't have to say it directly. The message was clear. Keep your mouth shut, or lose everything. Keisha wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So I kept my mouth shut. What else could I do? My kids need me. My mother needs me. I can't fight a war I'm going to lose. Marcus leaned forward. What if you weren't fighting alone? Keisha looked at him. Really looked at him. Who are you, Marcus? And don't give me another vague answer. I just told you something that could get me fired or worse. I think I deserve to know who I'm talking to. Marcus took a deep breath. He'd planned to wait longer to build more trust, gather more evidence. But looking at Keisha Williams, seeing the exhaustion and fear and desperate hope in her eyes, he made a decision. I'm the new owner of this company, he said quietly. I bought controlling shares 2 weeks ago. Nobody knows except my lawyers and my daughter. Keisha stared at him. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You're lying. I'm not. That's impossible. You're a security guard. I was a security guard. Before that, I was a soldier. Before that, I was a kid from the west side of Atlanta who didn't have 2 dimes to rub together. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened his banking app, and slid it across the table. 11 days ago, I won the lottery. $47 million. 6 days later, I used $31 million of it to buy this company. Keisha looked at the phone screen. Her face went pale. Oh my God. I've been watching, learning, documenting. I needed to see what this place was really like before I revealed myself. And what I've seen. Marcus shook his head. It's worse than I imagined. Derek Morrison, Keisha whispered. He's the one behind the fraud, isn't he? The payments to Meridian Consulting, they're going to him. I believe so. I've got evidence, but I need more. I need someone who understands the financial systems, who can connect the dots in a way that's legally bulletproof. You need me. I need you. Keisha sat back in her chair, her mind visibly racing. Marcus could see the battle playing out on her face. Fear versus hope, caution versus courage. If I help you, she said slowly, and this goes wrong, I lose everything. My job, my reputation, my ability to provide for my family. I know. But if it goes right, you become CFO of a company that actually values you. You get the salary you deserve, the respect you've earned, and the chance to build something better. Marcus paused. And Derek Morrison goes to prison. Keisha was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. What do you need me to do? Over the next week, Marcus and Keisha worked in secret. They met in her car during lunch breaks in coffee shops across town, in her living room after her kids went to bed. Piece by piece, they assembled the puzzle. The fraud was bigger than either of them had imagined. Derek Morrison had been siphoning money from Titan Properties for almost 3 years. The total amount, as far as they could calculate, was somewhere north of $4 million. He'd done it through fake consulting contracts, inflated expenses, and a network of shell companies that existed only on paper. But Derek wasn't working alone. Gavin Pierce, a longtime board member who'd been with the company since its founding, had been helping him cover the tracks. And Derek's wife, Sandra Morrison, who ran the HR department, had been systematically silencing anyone who got too close to the truth. "They've got a whole system," Keisha said one night. They were sitting at her kitchen table surrounded by documents and laptops and cold cups of coffee. "Anyone who asks questions gets labeled a problem employee. Bad reviews, denied promotions, mysterious performance issues that show up in their files. And if that doesn't work, they get fired for cause," Marcus finished. "Trumped-up violations, manufactured evidence." "Exactly." Keisha pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. "I went back through 5 years of termination records. 12 employees were fired for misconduct in that period. You know what they all had in common. They were black. 10 of the 12, and most of them had flagged financial irregularities in the months before they were terminated." Marcus felt sick. This wasn't just fraud. This was a system designed to exploit and eliminate anyone who threatened the status quo. A system that had been running for years, protected by money power and the assumption that nobody would ever care enough to stop it. "We need to talk to them," he said. "The former employees. Get their testimonies." "Already ahead of you." Keisha slid a piece of paper across the table. "I tracked down 7 of them. 5 agreed to talk. They've been waiting for anyone to listen to their stories." Marcus looked at the list of names. Jerome Washington, Patricia Holmes, David Chen, Angela Martinez, Raymond Brooks. Real people, real lives, destroyed by the same system that had thrown Marcus to the marble floor. "Set up the meetings," he said. "I want to hear every word." The testimonies were devastating. Jerome Washington, a former maintenance supervisor, had been fired 2 years ago for theft, a charge based on doctored inventory records that he'd never had access to. He'd lost his house, his wife had left him, and he was now living in a 1-bedroom apartment in College Park, working as a rideshare driver. "I gave that company 15 years. Jerome said, his voice heavy with bitterness. 15 years of my life, and they threw me away like garbage because I asked why we were paying twice as much for cleaning supplies as the year before." Patricia Holmes, a former executive assistant, had been fired for insubordination after she'd walked in on Derek Morrison shredding documents late one night. "He looked at me like I was already dead," she told Marcus. 3 days later, I was accused of stealing office supplies. They said they found company property in my car. I never took anything, they planted it there. I know they did." The stories went on and on, each one worse than the last. Each one painting a picture of a company that had been rotting from the inside for years. And at the center of it all, like a spider in his web, sat Derek Morrison. 2 weeks after his fall in the lobby, Marcus sat in his truck outside the Titan Properties building and stared at his phone. The board meeting was in 5 days. His ownership would become public record then, one way or another. He could reveal himself now. Walk into that building, present his evidence, and watch Derek Morrison's empire crumble. But something was still bothering him. He called Keisha. "I need you to check something for me," he said when she answered. "The quarterly audit that's happening right now, who's running it?" "Brad Hutchins." "Why?" "Because Derek told you to reorganize the financial records right before the audit started. That wasn't random. He's planning something." Keisha was quiet for a moment. Then, "You think he's going to alter the records, make the fraud disappear? Or make it look like someone else's fault?" Marcus thought about what Ray had told him about Derek's pattern of scapegoating people who couldn't fight back. "Keisha, who's the most vulnerable person in your department right now?" "What do you mean? Who's got the weakest position, the least protection, the most to lose?" Silence. Then very quietly, "Me. Oh God. Marcus, it's me." Marcus found Derek Morrison's assistant, a nervous young woman named Allison, in the copy room the next morning. He'd been watching her for days. She was Derek's gatekeeper, which meant she saw everything. "Excuse me, miss. I think one of these copiers is jammed." Allison looked up, startled. "Oh, security can't fix the copiers. You need to call IT." "I know, I saw you in here, and I wanted to ask you something." Marcus kept his voice gentle. "You okay? You've seemed stressed lately." Allison's eyes widened. Nobody in this building asked her if she was okay. She was invisible, just like Marcus, just like all the people who kept the machine running. "I'm fine," she said automatically. Then more quietly, "It's just, Mr. Morrison has been in a mood. The quarterly audit is making everyone tense." "What kind of mood?" Allison glanced around, making sure they were alone. "He's been in early every day, staying late, having closed-door meetings with Mr. Pierce and some lawyers I've never seen before." She hesitated. "And he asked me to pull all of Keisha Williams' personnel files. Every email she's ever sent, every document she's ever touched." Marcus felt his blood go cold. "When did he ask you to do this?" "3 days ago. I'm supposed to have everything ready for him by tomorrow." 3 days. They had 3 days before Derek Morrison made his move. "Allison, listen to me very carefully. I know you don't know me, and I know you have no reason to trust me. But something very bad is about to happen, and you might be the only person who can help stop it." Allison stared at him, fear flickering in her eyes. "Who are you?" "Someone who's been watching. Someone who sees what really goes on in this building." Marcus lowered his voice. "Derek Morrison is going to frame Keisha Williams for fraud. He's going to use those files you're pulling to manufacture evidence against her. And when he's done, she's going to lose her job, her reputation, maybe even her freedom." I can't go against Mr. Morrison. He'll destroy me." "He's going to destroy a lot of people if someone doesn't stop him. But you don't have to fight him directly. All I need is information. Anything you can tell me about what he's planning." Allison's hands were trembling. Marcus could see her calculating the same calculation Keisha had made, the same calculation every vulnerable person in that building had to make every single day. "There's a meeting tomorrow," she whispered finally. 3 o'clock. Mr. Morrison, Mr. Pierce, and someone from the compliance department. They've blocked out the conference room for 2 hours. "What's the meeting about?" "I don't know, but I heard Mr. Morrison on the phone yesterday. He said, 'We pin it all on Williams. By this time next week she's gone and we're clean.'" Marcus nodded slowly. "Thank you, Allison. Thank you for being brave." "I'm not brave," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm just tired of watching good people get hurt." That night, Marcus sat in Keisha's living room and told her everything. "Tomorrow at 3, he said. "That's when they're going to finalize their plan to frame you." Keisha sat very still. Her children were asleep upstairs. Her mother was in the next room watching television with the volume turned low. "So what do? We move first. We don't wait for the board meeting. We don't give them time to plant evidence or build their case. Tomorrow morning I walk into that building as the owner and we blow this whole thing open. That's 2 days ahead of schedule. Are we ready? We have to be ready." Marcus reached across and took her hand. "Keisha, I need you to trust me. I know I'm asking you to risk everything, but I promise you, I swear on my daughter's life, I will not let them destroy you." Keisha looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay. Tomorrow. We end this." Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in his apartment, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario in his mind. What if Derek had backup plans? What if the board sided with him anyway? What if Keisha got cold feet? At 4:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. "I'm awake. Can't sleep. Are we really doing this?" Marcus typed back. "We're really doing this. Meet me at the parking garage at 7:30. Back entrance." What should I wear? Marcus smiled despite his nerves. Whatever makes you feel powerful. He showered, shaved, and put on the suit he'd bought 3 days ago. Navy blue, perfectly tailored, nothing flashy. He looked at himself in the mirror. Really looked for the first time in years. 57 years old. Gray at the temples. Lines around his eyes from decades of hard work and harder losses. But something else too. Something that had been dormant for a long time. Fire. His phone rang. Patricia Chen. "You ready?" she asked without preamble. "As ready as I'll ever be. I've got the legal team on standby. The documents are prepared. Once you walk in there and identify yourself, everything becomes official. There's no going back." "I know." "Marcus." Patricia's voice softened. "What you're about to do, it's not just about this company. You know that, right? People are going to talk about this for years. A black security guard who bought the company that disrespected him and cleaned house. That's a story. I don't care about stories. I care about justice. They're the same thing sometimes." She paused. "Good luck. Call me when it's done." Marcus hung up and grabbed his keys. It was time. The morning air was cold and sharp as Marcus pulled into the Titan Properties parking garage. He parked in his usual spot, the far corner support staff section, for the last time. Keisha was waiting by the back entrance wearing a burgundy blazer and black pants. Her hair was pulled back, her posture straight. She looked like a woman ready for war. "You look different," she said when he approached. "So do you." "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal. I threw up twice this morning." Keisha laughed, a short, nervous burst. "That's supposed to make me feel better. It's supposed to make you feel less alone." Marcus checked his watch. 7:42 a.m. "Okay, here's the plan. I'm going in through the main entrance. Same lobby where Derek shoved me 3 weeks ago. I want them to see me walk through that door." "And me." "You go in through the side. Head to your desk like normal. At 8:30, security's going to escort you to the main conference room. That's where the board will be assembled." "They're not going to like that. Security escorting me like I'm in trouble." "That's the point. Let them think what they want. When you walk into that room, you walk in with the truth. That's all that matters." Keisha took a deep breath. "What if they don't believe us?" "They will, because we're not just bringing accusations, we're bringing proof. Bank records, emails, testimonies, the whole thing. Derek Morrison can lie about a lot of things, but he can't lie about numbers. He's been lying about numbers for 3 years. To people who weren't paying attention. Today, everyone pays attention." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what was coming settling over them like a heavy blanket. "Marcus," Keisha said quietly, "whatever happens in there, thank you. For seeing me. For believing me. Nobody's done that in a long time. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. No. But for the first time in years, I feel like I might actually have a chance." She straightened her blazer. "Let's go take back what's ours." Marcus walked through the front entrance of Titan Properties at exactly 7:58 a.m. The lobby was busy with the morning rush employees streaming toward elevators, the smell of coffee hanging in the air, the soft murmur of corporate small talk. Nobody noticed him at first. Why would they? He was just another face in the crowd. Then Brittany, the receptionist who had ignored him 3 weeks ago while he bled on the marble floor, looked up from her computer. Her face went pale. "Mr. She fumbled for words. "You can't be here. You're not on the schedule." Marcus stopped in front of her desk. "I'm not on a lot of things. That's about to change. I need to call security." "Go ahead. Tell them Marcus Johnson is here. Tell them I'm going to the executive floor. And tell them..." He leaned in slightly. "Tell them I own this building." Brittany's mouth fell open. Before she could respond, Marcus was already walking toward the executive elevator. Behind him, he heard her frantically dialing. "Security, security, we have a situation in the lobby. It's that guard, the one from a few weeks ago, he's back, and he's saying..." The elevator doors closed, cutting off her voice. Marcus pressed the button for the top floor and watched the numbers climb. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. 22 years in the army had taught him how to function under pressure. The doors opened. The executive floor was everything the rest of the building aspired to be. Thick carpets, original artwork offices with views that stretched for miles. This was where the power lived, where decisions were made that affected hundreds of lives. And standing directly in front of the elevator like he'd been waiting was Derek Morrison. Well, well. Derek's voice dripped with contempt. The security guard returns. I thought I made it clear you don't belong up here. You made a lot of things clear, Derek. Your mistake was thinking I was listening. Derek's eyes narrowed. He looked at Marcus's suit, his confident posture, the folder tucked under his arm. What is this? Some kind of lawsuit you think you can sue your way to relevance? I don't need to sue anyone. Marcus stepped out of the elevator. I already own the company. For a moment, just a moment, Derek's mask slipped. Confusion flickered across his face, followed by something that looked almost like fear. Then he laughed. You're insane. Security. He raised his voice. Someone get this lunatic off my floor. 2 guards appeared from around the corner, men Marcus had worked with for 3 years. They hesitated when they saw him. Marcus, one of them said. What's going on, man? I'm here for a board meeting. You can verify with Patricia Chen at Horizon Investments. She's been in contact with the board chairman. Derek grabbed his arm. I don't know what game you're playing, but get your hands off me. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Something in his tone made Derek release him immediately. 3 weeks ago, you threw me to the ground in this lobby. Marcus said, his voice calm and clear. You told me I didn't belong here. You treated me like I was nothing. He stepped closer, meeting Derek's eyes. But the whole time, every single day, I mopped floors and checked doors and watched you strut around like a king I was documenting. Every lie. Every theft. Every person you destroyed to protect yourself. Derek's face had gone white. You're bluffing. Am I? Marcus opened the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Meridian Consulting. $50,000 a month for 2 years. Payments to a company that doesn't exist routed through a Cayman Islands shell corporation. You want to tell the board about that, or should I? Derek stared at the paper like it was a live grenade. Where did you get this? I own the company, Derek. I have access to everything. The elevator chimed behind them. The doors opened, and out stepped 2 people Marcus had never seen before, a man and a woman in expensive suits carrying leather briefcases. Mr. Johnson. The woman extended her hand. I'm Victoria Hayes, Corporate Counsel for Horizon Investments. This is my colleague Michael Torres. We're here to facilitate the transition. Derek looked from the lawyers to Marcus to the security guards and back again. For the first time since Marcus had known him, Derek Morrison looked genuinely afraid. This isn't over. Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're right, Marcus replied. It's just beginning. The boardroom filled quickly. Word had spread through the building like wildfire. Employees gathered in the hallway whispering, trying to catch glimpses through the glass walls. The board members arrived one by one, some confused, some angry, some visibly nervous. Gavin Pierce was the last to enter. He took one look at Marcus and his lawyers, then turned to Derek. What the hell is happening? I don't know, Derek said through gritted teeth. But we're going to find out. Marcus stood at the head of the table, the seat that had been Derek's territory for years. He didn't sit. He wanted them to have to look up at him. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. My name is Marcus Johnson. 3 weeks ago, through my holding company Horizon Investments, I acquired a controlling interest in Titan Properties. As of this morning, I am the majority shareholder and acting CEO. Murmurs rippled through the room. Board members exchanged glances. One of them, a silver-haired woman named Eleanor Cross, raised her hand. We were told the acquisition was by an anonymous investment group. How do we know you're telling the truth? Victoria Hayes stepped forward, distributing documents to each board member. These are the official filings. Stock transfers, legal documentation, everything verified and notarized. Mr. Johnson's ownership is a matter of public record as of midnight last night. Eleanor flipped through the papers, her expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. "This is legitimate," she said quietly. "He actually owns us." "That's impossible," Gavin Pierce sputtered. "He's a security guard. Where would a security guard get $30 million? $47 million, actually," Marcus said. "Lottery. Georgia Powerball. I used $31 million for the acquisition and put the rest in trust for my daughter's education and my future grandchildren." The room went silent. Derek stood abruptly. "This is absurd. Even if he does own shares, that doesn't give him the right to—" "To what?" Marcus cut him off. "To walk into my own company, to ask questions about where my money is going, to investigate why millions of dollars have been disappearing into fake consulting contracts for the past 3 years. Derek's face went red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then let me refresh your memory." Marcus nodded to Michael Torres, who began setting up a laptop and projector. "What you're about to see is evidence of systematic fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice perpetrated by members of this company's leadership." The screen flickered to life. The first image was a bank statement showing transfers to Meridian Consulting. $50,000 a month, Marcus narrated. Starting in January of 2 years ago and continuing through last week. Total amount $1.2 million. Meridian Consulting has no employees, no office, no business registration anywhere in the United States. It's a shell company, and all funds were routed to an account in the Cayman Islands. He clicked to the next slide. This is a copy of the account holder information. The beneficial owner of that Cayman account is listed as Derek Morrison. Gasps echoed through the room. Derek gripped the edge of the table. "That's falsified. Someone tampered with those records." "Really? Then perhaps you can explain this." The next slide showed an email chain between Derek and Gavin Pierce dated 8 months ago. Marcus read aloud, "From Derek Morrison to Gavin Pierce. Quote, the auditors are getting too close. We need to accelerate the timeline. Push the Williams situation now. If she keeps digging, she'll find the Meridian connection." End quote. Every eye in the room turned to Gavin Pierce, who had gone pale as a ghost. That's taken out of context," he stammered. "Then let me provide more context." Marcus clicked again. This is a recording made by Jerome Washington, a former maintenance supervisor who was fired 2 years ago on fabricated theft charges. Jerome had documented irregularities in supply invoices that traced back to the same fraudulent expense categories. 2 weeks before he was terminated, he recorded this conversation in the parking garage. Michael Torres pressed play. Derek's voice filled the room. "The black guy in maintenance is asking too many questions. Handle it. I don't care how, just make him go away." Gavin's voice responded. "We can plant something. Make it look like he's been stealing. HR will do the paperwork." Derek again. "Do it fast, and make sure it sticks. I don't want him talking to anyone." The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. Eleanor Cross stood slowly, her face etched with horror. "Derek, tell me this isn't true." Derek's mouth moved, but no words came out. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. "Much more. But before I continue, I want to bring someone into this room, someone whose testimony is central to understanding how deep this corruption goes." He walked to the door and opened it. Keisha Williams stepped inside. She walked to the front of the room with her head held high, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the weight of judgment from people who had overlooked her for 7 years. "My name is Keisha Williams," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I've been an employee of this company for 7 years. In that time, I've been passed over for promotion 4 times despite consistently exceeding performance expectations. I've trained 3 men who now outrank me. And 6 months ago, I discovered financial irregularities that I reported to my supervisor, Brad Hutchins, who destroyed my report and threatened my job if I continued asking questions. She pulled out her own folder of documents. What Mr. Hutchins didn't know is that I kept copies. Everything. The original reports, the emails, the timestamps showing exactly when my documents were deleted from the system and by whom. She met Derek's eyes. You thought you could silence me because I was vulnerable, because I had too much to lose, but you underestimated how much I had to gain by telling the truth. Derek lunged from his seat. You lying! 2 security guards stepped forward, blocking his path. Marcus recognized them, the same men who had watched him get thrown to the ground 3 weeks ago. Now they stood on his side. Sit down, Derek, Marcus said. We're not finished. For the next hour, Marcus and Keisha systematically dismantled the empire of lies Derek Morrison had built. They presented bank records, email chains, testimony from former employees, forensic analysis of deleted files, everything. The evidence was overwhelming, a mountain of proof that no amount of corporate spin could explain away. But the moment that broke, Derek completely came near the end. Marcus pulled up a video file. This is security footage from the lobby, he said. 3 weeks ago, February 14th, 8:47 a.m. The video played. Everyone in the room watched as Marcus, wearing his security uniform, walked through the front doors. They watched as Derek Morrison approached him, said something that made his face harden, and then shoved him to the ground. They watched Marcus's badge skid across the marble, watched him slowly push himself up, blood on his lip. That man, Marcus said quietly, pausing the video on Derek's face twisted with contempt, is the COO of this company, the man responsible for company culture, for setting the standard of how employees are treated. He turned to face the board. Is this the standard you want? Is this what Titan Properties represents? Nobody spoke. Eleanor Cross was the first to break the silence. I move for immediate termination of Derek Morrison's employment, pending criminal investigation. All in favor. Every hand went up. Derek's face contorted. You can't do this. You need me. This company would fall apart without... The company's been falling apart because of you, Eleanor said coldly. Security, please escort Mr. Morrison from the building and contact the authorities. They'll want to review this evidence. As the guards took Derek's arms, he twisted around to face Marcus one last time. You think you've won? He spat. You're nothing. A security guard who got lucky. You don't know how to run a company. You'll destroy everything. Marcus walked toward him, stopping just inches away. Maybe, he said quietly. But I know how to treat people, and that's something you never learned. He nodded to the guards. They led Derek Morrison out of the boardroom, through the hallway lined with watching employees, and into the elevator. Marcus turned back to face the board. Now, he said, let's talk about the future. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Marcus laid out his vision for Titan Properties, a company that valued every employee from the executive suite to the security desk. A company that promoted based on merit, not politics. A company that would never again sacrifice the vulnerable to protect the powerful. When he announced Keisha Williams as the new chief financial officer, the applause was genuine. When he announced that every employee wrongfully terminated by Derek Morrison would be offered reinstatement with back pay, Eleanor Cross actually wiped tears from her eyes. And when he announced that the company would establish a whistleblower protection program and an independent ethics committee, even the skeptics nodded in approval. By the time the meeting ended, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. That evening, Marcus stood alone in the lobby of Titan Properties. The building was quiet now. Employees had gone home. The chaos of the day had settled into whispers and speculation. Tomorrow there would be press conferences, legal proceedings, 1,000 details to manage. But tonight Marcus just wanted to stand here, in this lobby, on this marble floor. His phone rang. Maya. Dad, I saw the news. It's everywhere. Yeah. You did it. You actually did it. Marcus looked around the empty lobby, the same lobby where he'd been thrown to the ground where he'd bled, while people walked past like he was invisible. We did it, he said. Me and Keisha and Jerome and Patricia and everyone who ever got crushed by people like Derek Morrison. We did it together. I'm proud of you, Dad. Mom would be too. Marcus felt the familiar ache. I know, baby girl. I know. After he hung up, he walked to the center of the lobby and stood there for a long moment, remembering. Then he pulled out his old security badge, the one that had skidded across this floor 3 weeks ago, and held it in his hand. He was done being invisible. The news of Derek Morrison's termination spread through Atlanta like wildfire. By midnight, every local station had picked up the story. By morning, it had gone national. Security guard turned billionaire owner exposes corporate fraud. That was CNN's headline. The hoodie that fooled everyone. Fox News ran with something catchier. Black man buys company that humiliated him, fires executives. Twitter turned it into a movement. Marcus watched the coverage from his apartment, his phone buzzing constantly with interview requests, congratulations and messages from people he hadn't spoken to in decades. Old army buddies, distant cousins, even his high school football coach, who was 93 and still sharp as a tack. But Marcus wasn't celebrating. He knew Derek Morrison too well. The man hadn't survived this long by accepting defeat gracefully. His phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Patricia Chen. We have a problem. Marcus sat up straight. Talk to me. Derek's lawyer filed an emergency motion this morning. They're claiming the acquisition was fraudulent, saying you used insider information from your position as a security guard to manipulate the stock purchase. That's ridiculous. Everything went through proper channels. I know, but they don't need to win, they just need to create doubt. If they can get a judge to freeze your shares pending investigation, you lose control of the board, and Derek's allies can vote to reinstate him. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. How long do we have? The hearing is tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Judge Catherine Wheeler. What do we know about her? She's tough, fair, but she's also old school, doesn't like circus atmospheres. If Derek's team turns this into a media spectacle, she might side with them just to restore order. Marcus stood and walked to his window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. Somewhere in that city, Derek Morrison was plotting his comeback, and Marcus had less than 24 hours to stop him. Get me everything on that motion, he said. Every claim, every piece of evidence they're using. I want to know their strategy before they know it themselves. Already on it. But Marcus, there's something else. What? Patricia hesitated. Derek's lawyer is Raymond Cobb. The name hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Raymond Cobb was legendary in Atlanta, legal circles a fixer for the wealthy and powerful. He'd gotten CEOs acquitted of fraud, politicians cleared of corruption charges, and billionaires divorced with their fortunes intact. He charged $5,000 an hour and was worth every penny. Cobb doesn't take cases he can't win, Marcus said slowly. No, he doesn't. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, set up a meeting with our legal team, 1 hour. And Patricia, call Keisha. She needs to know what's coming. Keisha arrived at Marcus's apartment 45 minutes later, still wearing the clothes she'd had on the day before. She hadn't slept either. I saw the news, she said, her voice tight. They're calling me a disgruntled employee who fabricated evidence. TMZ has pictures of my house, my car, my kids' school. How did they even find that? Derek's people. They're trying to discredit you before you can testify. It's working. My mother called me crying this morning. She saw a segment on Fox that implied I was having an affair with you, that's the real reason I got promoted. Marcus felt a surge of anger so intense it nearly blinded him. They're attacking your reputation because they can't attack the evidence. Does it matter? In the court of public opinion, I'm already guilty. Keisha's voice cracked. My kids are going to see this, Marcus. My 12-year-old daughter asked me this morning why people on the internet are saying mean things about mommy. What did you tell her? I told her that sometimes when you do the right thing, bad people try to hurt you, and that the only way to fight back is to keep telling the truth. Keisha wiped her eyes. But honestly, I'm terrified. What if we lose? What if Derek wins and I end up blacklisted from every company in the country? Marcus walked over and put his hands on her shoulders. Look at me, Keisha. Look at me. She met his eyes. We are not going to lose. I didn't survive 22 years in the army to be beaten by a thief in a designer suit. And you didn't survive 7 years of being overlooked and undervalued to be taken down by lies. He squeezed her shoulders gently. We're going to fight. And we're going to win. But I need you to trust me. I do trust you. But trust doesn't stop me from being scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it make you quit. Keisha took a deep breath. What's the plan? We hit back. Hard. Derek wants to make this about my character, your character, anything except the actual evidence. So we flood the zone with evidence. Every document, every recording, every testimony, we release it all. Not to the media, to the court. Let Raymond Cobb try to explain away a mountain of proof. And if that's not enough, then we find more. Derek's been stealing for 3 years. There's no way we've found everything. Someone else knows something. Someone else has seen something. Marcus paused. And I think I know where to start. Sandra Morrison answered her door at 11:47 a.m., her face puffy from crying. Derek's wife, former head of HR, looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Mrs. Morrison, my name is... I know who you are. Her voice was hoarse. You're the man who destroyed my husband. With respect, ma'am, your husband destroyed himself. I just showed people what he'd been doing. Sandra stared at him with red-rimmed eyes. What do you want? I want to give you a choice. The same choice your husband never gave to the people he hurt. I don't understand. Your husband is going to lose tomorrow. Raymond Cobb is a good lawyer, but he can't change facts. The evidence against Derek is overwhelming fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of justice. He's looking at federal charges, Mrs. Morrison. Years in prison. Sandra's hand trembled on the doorframe. But here's the thing, Marcus continued. The investigation hasn't focused on you. Not yet. HR approved a lot of those fraudulent terminations. HR buried complaints. HR created the paper trails that covered Derek's tracks. He paused. Now maybe you didn't know what you were doing. Maybe you were just following orders, trusting your husband. If that's the case, I'm willing to believe you. Why would you do that? Because I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in justice. And justice means going after the people who made the decisions, not the people who were used as tools. Sandra was silent for a long moment. Tears streamed down her face. He told me it was all legitimate, she whispered. The consulting contracts, the expense reports, he said it was standard practice. I didn't ask questions because he's my husband. You don't question your own husband. I understand. But I knew. Her voice broke. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. The way he'd get angry when I asked about certain files. The way he'd make me sign documents without reading them. I knew, and I didn't do anything. What did you know specifically, Mrs. Morrison? Sandra looked at him for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. Then she stepped back and opened the door wider. You'd better come inside. The documents Sandra Morrison provided were devastating. She had copies of everything, backup files Derek didn't know existed, hidden on a personal server she'd maintained for years. Insurance, she called it. Protection in case their marriage went bad and she needed leverage in a divorce. I never thought I'd actually use them, she said as Marcus and Patricia scrolled through files on her laptop. I just wanted something to fall back on. The files showed the full scope of Derek's operation. Not just Meridian Consulting, there were 6 other shell companies spanning 3 different countries. The total amount embezzled wasn't $4 million. It was $11.3 million. My God, Patricia whispered. This goes back almost 5 years. But that wasn't the worst of it. Buried in the files was a folder labeled Personnel Actions. Inside were detailed notes on every employee who'd been terminated, demoted, or driven out of the company for getting too close to the truth. 12 names, 12 lives destroyed, all documented with cold clinical precision. Marcus read through the notes, his stomach turning. Jerome Washington. Maintenance supervisor. Flagged supply invoice discrepancies. Recommend termination for theft. Plant evidence in locker. Execute within 2 weeks. Patricia Holmes. Executive assistant. Witnessed document destruction. Recommend termination for insubordination. Create paper trail of complaints. Execute immediately. Keisha Williams. Senior accountant. Persistent questions about Meridian accounts. Do not terminate too visible. Recommend systematic marginalization. Block promotions. Isolate from key projects. If continues, proceed to termination for performance issues. Marcus set down the laptop. His hands were shaking. He kept records, he said quietly. He kept records of everyone he hurt, like trophies. Sandra nodded, her face ashen. Derek is very organized. He once told me that the key to power is documentation. Keep records of everything, he said. You never know when you'll need leverage. Well, his documentation just became our evidence. Marcus turned to Patricia. Can we get this authenticated before tomorrow's hearing? I'll have our forensic team working on it within the hour. If these files are legitimate, and they look legitimate, Derek Morrison isn't just facing fraud charges. He's facing conspiracy, racketeering, possibly even civil rights violations for the targeted terminations. Marcus stood and looked at Sandra. Why are you helping us? Derek's your husband. Sandra was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I've spent 20 years pretending not to see who he really is. Pretending that the cruelty was just ambition. Pretending that the lies were just business. She met Marcus's eyes. I'm tired of pretending. And maybe this is my chance to be someone better than the woman I've become. Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. What you've done today, it matters. It matters more than you know. The courthouse was packed by 8:30 a.m. News vans lined the street. Reporters jostled for position on the steps. The story had captured the nation's imagination, a security guard versus a corporate titan. David versus Goliath, justice versus power. Marcus arrived with Patricia and the Horizon legal team. They walked through the crowd without commenting, ignoring the shouted questions and flashing cameras. Inside the courtroom was standing room only. Marcus spotted several familiar faces: Jerome Washington, Patricia Holmes, Ray Patterson, and half a dozen other former employees who'd come to watch. Keisha sat in the front row, her back straight, her expression determined. Derek Morrison entered from a side door flanked by Raymond Cobb and 2 junior associates. He looked confident, too confident in a custom suit and silk tie. He caught Marcus's eye and smiled, the kind of smile that said, I'm going to enjoy destroying you. Marcus didn't smile back. Judge Catherine Wheeler entered at exactly 9 a.m. She was in her 60s, silver-haired with sharp eyes that missed nothing. This court is now in session, she announced. We're here to address an emergency motion filed by Derek Morrison challenging the legitimacy of the acquisition of Titan Properties by Horizon Investments. Mr. Cobb, you may proceed. Raymond Cobb rose with practiced elegance. Your Honor, my client has been the victim of a coordinated scheme to defraud him of his position and reputation. The acquisition by Horizon Investments was conducted using material non-public information obtained through Mr. Johnson's position as a security guard at Titan Properties. This constitutes insider trading and renders the acquisition void. Do you have evidence to support this claim? Judge Wheeler asked. Indeed, Your Honor. We have documentation showing that Mr. Johnson had access to confidential financial projections, board meeting schedules, and internal communications that gave him an unfair advantage in timing his stock purchase. Patricia leaned over to Marcus. This is their whole strategy. Make it about how you got the information, not about what Derek did with the company's money. Let them talk, Marcus whispered back. They haven't seen what we've got. Cobb continued for another 20 minutes, painting a picture of Marcus as a scheming opportunist who'd used his lowly position to spy on executives and manipulate the market. It was a masterful performance. Half-truths woven with implications, character assassination dressed up as legal argument. When Cobb finally sat down, Judge Wheeler turned to the defense table. Ms. Chen, your response. Patricia stood. Your Honor, before I address Mr. Cobb's allegations, I'd like to present evidence that is directly relevant to this matter. Evidence that was obtained just last night and has been authenticated by our forensic team. Cobb jumped up. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We haven't been given time to review. Mr. Cobb, you filed an emergency motion with less than 24 hours' notice. You don't get to complain about irregular procedures. Judge Wheeler nodded to Patricia. Proceed. Patricia distributed copies of the documents to the Judge Cobb and his team. What you're looking at is a comprehensive record of criminal activity conducted by Derek Morrison over the past 5 years. $11.3 million embezzled through shell companies. 12 employees wrongfully terminated to cover up the fraud. Internal memos documenting the deliberate destruction of evidence. Cobb's face had gone pale. He flipped through the documents frantically. These files were provided voluntarily by Sandra Morrison, Derek's wife, who maintained backup copies without her husband's knowledge. They have been authenticated by digital forensic experts, and chain of custody has been established. Judge Wheeler studied the documents, her expression growing darker with each page she turned. Mr. Cobb, she said slowly, are you aware of what's in these files? Cobb stood clearly shaken. Your Honor, I need time to review these with my client. Derek Morrison documented his own crimes, Patricia continued. He kept records of every illegal payment, every fabricated termination, every instance of evidence tampering. He did this because he believed he was untouchable. He believed that no one would ever hold him accountable. She turned to look at Derek. He was wrong. Derek Morrison rose from his seat. This is a setup. Those files are fake, manufactured by my wife as revenge because I told her I wanted a divorce. Mr. Morrison, you will sit down and be quiet, Judge Wheeler said sharply. She's lying. They're all lying. This company was nothing before I... Security, remove Mr. Morrison from this courtroom. 2 bailiffs moved toward Derek, who was now red-faced and screaming. You can't do this. I built that company. I am that company. Without me. The bailiffs grabbed his arms. Derek struggled, his composure completely shattered. Johnson, Johnson, look at me, Derek screamed as they dragged him toward the door. You think you've won? This isn't over. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy everyone you care about. The doors closed on his screams. The courtroom was silent. Judge Wheeler removed her reading glasses and rubbed her temples. Well, that was dramatic. She turned to Cobb. Mr. Cobb, would you like to withdraw your motion, or would you prefer I rule against you? Cobb stood slowly, his face ashen. Your Honor, in light of the evidence presented, I am forced to withdraw the motion. I thought so. Judge Wheeler turned to Patricia. Ms. Chen, I assume you'll be forwarding this evidence to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Already done, Your Honor. Federal investigators are standing by. Good. The judge gathered her papers. This motion is dismissed. Mr. Johnson's ownership of Titan Properties is confirmed. And Mr. Cobb, I strongly suggest you consider your ethical obligations regarding the information you may have received from your client. She stood. Court is adjourned. The moment they stepped outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, cameras flashing, reporters surging forward. Marcus had expected hostility, more accusations, more doubt. Instead, he found something he hadn't anticipated. Support. People holding signs that read, "Justice for Marcus," and "We see you now." Former employees weeping with relief. Strangers reaching out to shake his hand to tell him their own stories of being overlooked and dismissed. Jerome Washington pushed through the crowd and grabbed Marcus in a bear hug. "You did it, man. You actually did it." "We did it," Marcus said. "All of us." Patricia Holmes was next, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I'd see the day. When they fired me, I thought my life was over. I thought nobody would ever believe me." "I believed you," Marcus said. "And now everyone else does too." Keisha appeared beside him, her professional composure finally breaking into a genuine smile. "We won. We won the first battle," Marcus corrected. "The war's not over yet." "Always so serious," she laughed. "Can't you just enjoy this for 1 minute?" Marcus looked around at the crowd, at the faces of people who'd been beaten down by the same system that had thrown him to the floor 3 weeks ago. People who'd been told they didn't matter, didn't belong, weren't worth fighting for. "Yeah," he said finally. "I guess I can enjoy it for a minute." His phone buzzed. A text from Maya Dad. "I'm watching the news. I'm so proud of you, I can barely breathe. Mom is smiling down right now. I just know it." Marcus felt his eyes sting. He typed back, "I couldn't have done it without you, baby girl. You're my strength." That evening, Marcus stood in the lobby of Titan Properties. The building was quiet. Employees had been given the day off while the legal situation played out. But the security desk was still staffed, and sitting behind it was Ray Patterson, 72 years old, and still showing up for work. "Mr. Johnson?" Ray stood as Marcus approached. "I saw what happened today. The whole world saw." "Ray, how many times have I told you to call me Marcus?" "That was before you owned the building, sir." Marcus laughed. "I'm still the same person I was 3 weeks ago." "No, you're not." Ray's voice was serious now. 3 weeks ago, you were a man pretending to be invisible. Today, you're a man who changed everything. He paused. "I've been working security for 40 years. I've seen a lot of rich men come and go. Most of them forget where they came from the minute they put on that fancy suit. But you remembered. You came back for us. I didn't do it alone. I know, but you're the one who started it. You're the one who took the risk." Ray reached out and shook Marcus's hand. "My granddaughter Destiny, she watched the news today. You know what she said? She said, 'Grandpa, can I be like Mr. Johnson when I grow up?' That little girl has hope now. Hope she didn't have yesterday." Marcus squeezed Ray's hand. "Tell Destiny that she can be anything she wants, and tell her she's already better than me. She's got her whole life ahead of her." Ray's eyes glistened. "I'll tell her. I'll tell her every day." Later that night, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, watching the city lights flicker through his window. His phone had finally stopped buzzing. The interviews could wait until tomorrow. The celebrations could wait until the work was done. For now, he just wanted to sit in the silence and breathe. He thought about Derek Morrison probably sitting in a federal holding cell right now, his empire crumbled, his reputation destroyed. He thought about Sandra facing her own reckoning for the choices she'd made. He thought about all the people who'd been caught in the machinery of corruption, some guilty, some innocent, all paying prices they never asked to pay. And he thought about Denise. His wife had been gone for 8 years, but he could still hear her voice, still feel her hand on his shoulder when the world got too heavy, still remember the way she'd look at him and say, "Marcus Johnson, you're the most stubborn man I've ever met, and that's why I love you." "I did it, baby," he whispered to the empty room. "I finally did something that mattered." The silence answered him, But in that silence, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. 6 months changed everything. Marcus stood at the window of his corner office on the top floor of Titan Properties, watching the Atlanta skyline shimmer in the afternoon sun. The same skyline he'd watched from the parking lot 1,000 times back when he was nobody. Back when he was invisible. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Dad, turn on CNN. They're doing a special on you." Marcus smiled and grabbed the remote, flipping to the news channel. A reporter stood outside the federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta, microphone in hand. Today marks the end of a saga that captivated the nation. Derek Morrison, former COO of Titan Properties, was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. His co-conspirator board member Gavin Pierce received 8 years. The case exposed systematic corruption at one of Atlanta's most prestigious real estate companies, corruption that was brought to light by an unlikely hero. The screen cut to footage of Marcus walking into the courthouse 3 months ago to testify. He remembered that day, the cameras, the questions, the weight of knowing that his words would determine the fate of men who had once looked at him like he was dirt on their shoes. Marcus Johnson, a former security guard who won the lottery and secretly purchased the company, became a symbol of accountability and justice. His decision to work undercover before revealing his ownership exposed not just financial crimes, but a culture of discrimination that had silenced minority employees for years. The reporter's voice continued, but Marcus muted the television. He'd heard enough praise over the past 6 months to last a lifetime. What mattered now wasn't the accolades. It was the work. A knock at his door pulled him from his thoughts. Keisha Williams stepped inside, tablet in hand, looking every bit the chief financial officer she'd become. "Board meeting in 15 minutes, she said. "You ready?" "I'm always ready. You're the one who should be nervous. You're presenting the quarterly results." "Nervous?" Keisha laughed. 6 months ago I was presenting to people who actively tried to destroy me. Now I'm presenting to a board that actually listens. This is a vacation by comparison." Marcus smiled. "How are the numbers looking?" "Good. Really good. Revenue is up 18%. Employee satisfaction scores are through the roof. And the diversity initiatives are showing real results. We've promoted more women and minorities in the past 6 months than the company did in the previous 5 years combined. And the whistleblower program. 23 reports since we launched it. Most are minor issues, policy violations, workplace conflicts, but 3 of them flagged potential financial irregularities that we've already addressed." Keisha paused. "The system works, Marcus. You built something that actually works." "We built it. Don't sell yourself short." Keisha was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I tell you something?" "Always. When you first told me who you really were sitting in that break room with the bad coffee, I thought you were crazy, or lying, or both." She shook her head. "I couldn't imagine a world where someone like me got to be in this room making these decisions, being heard. That world didn't exist. It exists now. Because you created it. You walked into a building that treated you like garbage, and instead of burning it down, you rebuilt it." Her voice caught slightly. "My daughter asked me the other day what I do at work. You know what I told her? I told her Mommy helps run a company. And she looked at me like I'd said I was a superhero." Keisha wiped her eyes. "She's 8 years old, Marcus. And she already believes that girls who look like her can run companies. That's not because of me. That's because of you." Marcus felt the familiar ache in his chest, the one that appeared whenever someone reminded him why this mattered. "Your daughter believes it because of you," he said quietly. "You're the one who shows up every day. You're the one who proves it's possible. I just opened the door." "You did a lot more than open a door." Keisha checked her watch. "Come on. We've got a board to impress." The boardroom had changed since Derek Morrison's reign. The massive portrait of the founding executives, all white, all male, had been replaced with a mural created by local artists celebrating Atlanta's diversity. The rigid seating arrangement had been transformed into a more collaborative setup. And the people around the table looked different too. Eleanor Cross, the board chair who had called for Derek's termination, sat at the head of the table. Beside her were 3 new board members Marcus had personally recruited, a Latina entrepreneur who'd built a real estate empire from nothing, a black former judge who specialized in corporate ethics, and a young Asian American tech executive who brought fresh perspectives to every discussion. Marcus took his seat as employees filed in for the quarterly all-hands meeting that followed every board session. This was his innovation, opening the last hour of board meetings to any employee who wanted to attend. Transparency, he'd learned, was the best defense against corruption. Eleanor called the meeting to order. Before we begin with the quarterly review, I'd like to acknowledge a milestone. 6 months ago, this company was on the brink of scandal. Today, we're being held up as a model for corporate reform. That transformation didn't happen by accident. It happened because of leadership. She turned to Marcus. Marcus, would you like to say a few words? Marcus stood looking around the room at the faces of people who'd become family over the past 6 months. Ray Patterson was there, promoted to head of security, with a salary that finally matched his decades of dedication. Jerome Washington, rehired as facilities director, sat near the back with tears in his eyes. Patricia Holmes, now executive assistant to the CEO to Marcus himself, was taking notes with a smile she couldn't hide. 6 months ago, Marcus began, I walked into this building wearing a hoodie and sneakers. A man named Derek Morrison threw me to the ground and told me I didn't belong here. He said the front door wasn't for people like me. He paused, letting the silence settle. He was right about one thing. People like me weren't supposed to be here. Not in the lobby, not in the boardroom, not in the corner office. This building, this company, was designed to keep people like me out. To make us invisible. To use us up and throw us away when we started asking questions. Marcus looked at Ray, at Jerome, at Keisha. But here's what Derek Morrison never understood. The people he called invisible, the security guards, the janitors, the accountants who got passed over, the assistants who got ignored, we were never invisible. We saw everything. We knew everything. And when we finally got the chance to speak, we told the truth. He walked to the window, looking out at the city. I didn't buy this company for revenge. I bought it because I believed it could be better. Because I'd spent 3 years watching good people get crushed by a bad system, and I knew that system could change. Not overnight, not easily, but it could change. He turned back to face the room. 6 months later, here's what I know. Change is hard, it's slow, it's frustrating. Every day I find something else that needs fixing, policies that don't make sense, habits that die hard, people who resist new ideas. But every day I also find something to celebrate. A promotion that went to the most qualified candidate, not the best connected one. A complaint that got investigated fairly instead of buried. An employee who told me they finally feel like they belong. Marcus walked back to the table. That's what we're building here. Not a perfect company, there's no such thing. But a company that tries. A company that listens. A company that knows the measure of success isn't just profit margins and stock prices. It's whether the person mopping the floor at midnight feels like they matter as much as the person in the corner office. He sat down. That's my vision. That's our mission. And if you're in this room, you're part of making it real. The applause started slowly and built to a roar. Marcus felt hands clapping his back, saw tears on faces throughout the room. But he kept his eyes on one person, Ray Patterson, 72 years old, who had stood up from his seat and was saluting him with the kind of precision that only came from military training. Marcus saluted back. After the meeting, Marcus found himself alone in the lobby. It was late, nearly 9 p.m., and the building had emptied except for the night shift security team. Marcus had told them to take a break while he walked the floors, something he did regularly. Old habits died hard. His footsteps echoed on the marble as he crossed to the spot where Derek Morrison had thrown him to the ground. He stood there for a long moment, remembering the cold floor against his face, the taste of blood, the feeling of being nothing. "I come here sometimes too." Marcus turned. Keisha stood behind him, coat over her arm bag on her shoulder. "Thought you went home," Marcus said. "I was going to, but then I saw you heading down here and I figured—" She shrugged. "I don't know. Felt like we should probably talk." "About what?" Keisha walked over and stood beside him, looking down at the marble floor. "About what happens next." "What do you mean?" "Marcus, you've done something incredible. You've changed this company, really changed it. But you can't do this forever. The lottery money won't last forever. The attention will fade. And eventually, people will stop talking about the security guard who bought the company and start asking what the company is actually accomplishing." "I know." "Do you—" Keisha turned to face him. "Because I've watched you work 18-hour days for 6 months. I've seen you skip meals, miss sleep, put everything into this building and these people. But you have a life outside these walls, Marcus. You have a daughter who barely sees you. You have your own health to think about." "I'm fine." "You're 57 years old, and you had chest pains last month that you told nobody about except your doctor." "Don't look at me like that, Patricia mentioned it." Marcus sighed. "It was nothing. Stress." "Exactly. Stress. Because you're carrying this entire company on your shoulders, like it's your personal responsibility to fix everything Derek Morrison broke." Keisha's voice softened. "You don't have to do this alone anymore. That's why you hired me. That's why you built a team. Let us help." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "After Denise died," he said finally, "I spent 3 years feeling useless, like I was just marking time until it was my turn. Working here, being invisible, it was almost a relief. Nobody expected anything from me. Nobody needed me to be strong." He looked around the lobby. "Then I won that lottery. And suddenly, I had the power to do something, to make something matter. And I thought, this is it. This is why I'm still here. This is what Denise would have wanted me to do. She would have wanted you to take care of yourself too. I know, but it's hard to slow down when there's still so much work to do." Keisha put her hand on his arm. "The work will always be there, Marcus. The question is whether you'll be there to see it finished." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. In the fluorescent light of the empty lobby, he saw the exhaustion in her eyes that mirrored his own. She'd been fighting just as hard, carrying just as much. "You should take your own advice," he said. "I know." She laughed softly. "We're both terrible at this. Pair of workaholics trying to save the world? Something like that." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Keisha checked her watch. "I should go. My kids have a school play tomorrow, and I promised I'd be there for the early rehearsal." "Go. Be with your family. You should do the same. When's the last time you saw Maya?" Marcus thought about it. 3 weeks ago, she came down for dinner." 3 weeks?" Keisha shook her head. "Call her tonight. Better yet, fly up to see her this weekend. I can handle things here. The quarterly reports can wait until Monday." "Marcus, you just gave a speech about how this company is about more than profit margins. Prove it. Go be a father." Marcus smiled despite himself. "When did you get so bossy?" "About 5 minutes after you made me CFO." She turned to leave, then paused. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything. I don't say it enough." "You don't have to say it. You show it every day." Keisha nodded once, then walked toward the elevator. Marcus watched her go, thinking about her words. She was right. About all of it. He pulled out his phone and dialed Maya's number. "Dad." Her voice was sleepy. It was late. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine, baby girl. I just wanted to ask you something." "What?" "You free this weekend? I was thinking I might fly up, take you to that Ethiopian restaurant you like, maybe catch a movie." Silence. Then, "Dad, are you dying?" Marcus laughed out loud. "What? No. Why would you say that? Because you've never voluntarily suggested coming to visit. Usually I have to guilt trip you for weeks. Well, maybe I'm trying to be better. Someone recently reminded me that I can't save the world if I don't take care of myself first. Whoever said that is very wise. She is. So what do you say? This weekend? I'd love that, Dad. I really would. Good. I'll book a flight tomorrow. He paused. Maya. Yeah. I love you. I don't say it enough. I love you too, Dad. Her voice cracked slightly. And you say it plenty. You just say it in different ways, like buying companies and fighting corruption, and making sure other people's kids have fathers who come home from work without being broken. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. How'd you get so smart? I learned from the best. Good night, Dad. Good night, baby girl. 3 months later, Marcus stood on the rooftop of Titan Properties for the company's annual celebration. The Atlanta skyline sparkled around them, the night air warm with the promise of spring. It had been a good year. Derek Morrison and Gavin Pierce were both serving their sentences. The company's stock had recovered and then some. And just last week, Fortune magazine had named Titan Properties one of the most ethical companies in America, a distinction that would have seemed laughable 12 months ago. But the moment that mattered most to Marcus wasn't the magazine covers or the stock prices. It was watching Ray Patterson walk across the stage to accept an award for Employee of the Year, an honor that came with a $50,000 bonus and a lifetime achievement plaque. Ray's speech was short. 42 years I've worked in this city, he said, his voice thick with emotion. 42 years of being told to use the back door, stay in my place, keep my head down. And then one day a man in a hoodie walked through the front door and changed everything. He looked at Marcus. Mr. Johnson, you didn't just buy a company. You bought us our dignity back. And that's something no amount of money can measure. The applause was thunderous. Marcus felt Maya squeeze his hand. She'd flown down for the celebration and hadn't left his side all evening. That's your legacy, Dad, she whispered. Not the money, not the company. That man right there feeling like he finally matters. Marcus nodded too, moved to speak. Later, after the speeches and the toasts and the celebration had wound down, Marcus found himself alone on the rooftop, looking out at the city. Keisha appeared beside him, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. Last one of the night, she said, offering him a glass. I'm about to turn into a pumpkin. Marcus took the glass and clinked it against hers. To the future. To the future. They drank in comfortable silence. You know what I was thinking about earlier? Keisha said. What? That break room. That terrible coffee. You sitting there telling me you owned the company, and me thinking you were absolutely insane. Marcus laughed. The coffee was pretty terrible. Still is. Some things never change. She paused. But a lot of things do. Changed for the better. Yeah, they do. Keisha set down her glass. I should go. My mother's watching the kids and she has opinions about late nights. Go. I'll close up here. She started toward the door, then stopped. Marcus? Yeah. What you did, what you're still doing, it matters. I hope you know that. Not just for the people in this company, but for everyone watching. Every black kid who thinks the deck is stacked against them. Every single parent working 2 jobs wondering if it's worth it. Every invisible person who's been told they don't belong. She met his eyes. You showed them what's possible. That's worth more than any Fortune magazine ranking. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly what makes it matter. She smiled. Good night, Marcus. Good night, Keisha, ma tante. Marcus stayed on the rooftop for another hour, watching the city lights twinkle beneath him. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the lottery ticket, the decision to buy the company, the 3 weeks of watching and waiting and documenting, the fear, the anger, the moments when he'd wondered if any of it was worth it. And he thought about Derek Morrison's words screamed in that courtroom as the bailiffs dragged him away. "You think you've won." Had he won? Marcus didn't know if he believed in winning. Not really. Life wasn't a game with clear victors and losers. It was a long, messy struggle to make things a little bit better than you found them. But standing here tonight looking out at the city his grandfather had helped build, the city where his daughter was pursuing her dreams, the city where hundreds of employees would wake up tomorrow knowing their work mattered. Standing here, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Pride. Not the arrogant pride of men like Derek Morrison, who needed to stand on others to feel tall, but the quiet pride of a man who had done something difficult because it was right, who had taken his pain and turned it into purpose, who had refused to become bitter even when bitterness would have been justified. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Thanks for tonight, Dad. I meant what I said. You're my hero. Not because you're rich or powerful, but because you never forgot where you came from. Sleep well. Love you." Marcus smiled and typed back, "Love you too, baby girl. More than you'll ever know." He slipped the phone into his pocket and took one last look at the skyline. Tomorrow, there would be more work, more challenges, more battles to fight and problems to solve. The world didn't fix itself overnight, and neither did companies or systems or cultures. But tonight, Marcus Johnson was going to go home, sleep in his own bed, and wake up grateful for a life he never imagined possible. He walked to the rooftop door, paused, and looked back one more time. The city sparkled beneath him, beautiful, imperfect, full of people struggling and hoping and dreaming just like he had. Marcus thought about his grandfather who had worked construction his whole life and died without ever seeing the inside of a building he'd helped build. He thought about his mother who had cleaned houses for 40 years and never once complained. He thought about Denise, who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. And he thought about the man in the hoodie who had walked through those front doors 3 weeks before everything changed. Invisible, overlooked, dismissed. That man was gone now. But Marcus would never forget him. Would never forget what it felt like to be nothing. Would never let that feeling touch another person if he could help it. He stepped through the door and headed home. The next morning, the lobby of Titan Properties would fill with employees arriving for work. Some of them would walk through the front door, some through the side. Some would be executives in expensive suits. Others would be janitors in worn uniforms. But every single one of them would matter. Every single one of them would belong. And that, more than any headline, any award, any fortune, was Marcus Johnson's true victory. Because real power doesn't come from money, or titles, or corner offices. Real power comes from lifting others up. Real power comes from remembering where you started. Real power comes from walking through doors that were never meant for you and holding them open for everyone behind you. Marcus Johnson understood that now, and he would spend the rest of his life proving it.